All right, welcome back. Now, as I said before, the last step in this whole process is to actually write scene one. So this video is going to be probably the least exciting video out of the series. It's basically just showing the process, how I think about things like short-term goals and actually producing a scene based on the word count expectations for each of these 5 scene points, and actually taking what looks like very little information, right? Just these details about the points, and actually turning them into a scene. Now, this is the part of the process that, what I will say, is going to require some practice as a writer. If you're watching this and you're from Dirty Discourse, I know that you've been getting that practice. If you're seeing this after this series has gone public and you don't really have any practice as a writer, then this is a part that you might find a little bit more challenging. I'll say that there's nothing that can make you can have the best outline, the best story, but the only way that you become a good writer is by practicing writing. And then also, so as we follow along here, I want you to keep in mind, not just for my benefit, but because this is true of writing in general, is that in the process of rapidly developing a novel, the very first thing that you should do is write your rough draft, right? It's a first draft, but it's basically all just about translating outline and story elements onto the page as book. When it comes to the commentary and things like that, you're welcome to say whatever you'd like about my writing style, but keep in mind that this process is this part of the video series. This is just to show that you can set small achievable goals and very rapidly develop from an outline to a book. Now, what you do with the book that you come up with, whether it's a rough draft, a first draft, whether you decide to take that and publish it immediately as it is, which I do not recommend, or if you're the type of person who spends a great deal of time, like if you are the type of person whose writing style is to start with scene point 1, hit that 440 words and really make that tight and well written before you move on to scene point 2 and do the same thing there, and then do it for scene point 3 and 4 and 5, that's fine. It's going to take a while to develop a book if you edit as you go, but there's no reason that you can't do it that way, and that your first draft could be sort of a passable second draft. Like that's perfectly fine. The way I do it is that I very quickly pump out rough draft chapters. When I'm writing for myself, I write the whole book really, really fast, then go back and start sort of tweaking it and self-editing and that sort of thing. When I ghostwrite for other clients, what I'll generally do is get that scene out really, really fast, then go back and edit the scene, then do the next scene and that sort of thing. And I only do that because in that case I'm on really specific deadlines, and need to get those people their books as quickly as possible and in as good a shape as possible. So that said, just keep in mind that that's what I'm doing here. Take note of the time. We took a little bit of a break, but it's now 7:03 p.m. I'm going to fast forward through this next part so that it appears to happen really fast, but just keep an eye on the time, 7:03. So what we're going to do, this is how I use Scrivener to hit these targets. Project targets. In this particular case, all I really want is the session target. You can see over the last session I've written 7,899 words. I'm going to reset that. And we are going to set the target to 440 words, because we know that at 220 words divided by those 5 points, that's roughly the range that we want to hit. And as you'll see, and as I'll show you, because I'm going to highlight these things whenever I hit different parts, that way afterwards we can talk about it and you can see it visually how it lays out. Every time I see this bar go green, kind of like this one is, that tells me that I've hit that point, I've hit 440 words, it's time to move on to the next point. I do a pretty good job personally of just keeping an eye on that and knowing when it is that I need to start bridging from point 1 to point 2, from point 2 to point 3, and that sort of thing. So without further ado, here goes that process. All right, pausing to slow down here just to show this is what around 440 words looks like. It's not very much, and if we go through and actually try and figure out like an average size paragraph, 1, 2, 3, this paragraph represents something that's probably about average size, right? Most of these, they fall into about that range. This is somewhere in the kind of median. Some of these are short for effect, right? That's just writing style stuff to try and drive the reader to experience the prose in some kind of rhythm that makes sense. All of that is outside the scope of this particular video, but for the purpose of trying to figure out how many paragraphs does it take to write these 5 points, right? Let's see, tools. So anyways, I did it the quick and dirty way, jumped into one of these files, and then copied and pasted. It's an average sort of short length paragraph, and what we see is that it's about 49 words. If we take a look at the whole thing and just look at the actual paragraphs that were there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 distinct paragraphs. 440 divided by 15, we end up at about 29 words per paragraph on average. So that's skewed a little bit by some of my short paragraphs, right? That one's really short. The first one's really short. If we were to count just the ones that are actual full paragraphs, we'd get a just sort of see as I go how I do this. So I'm going to reset that setting, go back here, and fast forward until the very end of the scene. All right, so we ran just a tiny bit longer for this scene than I expected to. It's 23:23, right on. That last bit was a little bit longer, 5:92. I needed to sort of build up a little bit of internal stuff. And in editing, if I want to hit that target square on, I could probably find 123 words to cut from this scene. I'm not going to do that right now. This is not about the editing process. It is 7:57. It took roughly an hour. I stopped a little bit in the middle at the very beginning to kind of talk about, you know, how long it took to write this one, that sort of thing. So I cut maybe 5 minutes off of that. It's about 55 minutes. For my kind of writing schedule, that's borderline perfect, because what I will generally do is write for 50 minutes, take 10 minutes off, write 50 minutes, take 10 minutes off, and so on and so like that. So let me just go back here and kind of like highlight some of these bits and pieces a little bit just to show you exactly what all this looks like sort of visually. Let's see. Officer of the Room Warden does believe cable should be used early, so this goes pretty much down to about here. This is the initial. Yeah. Okay, so this bit, this is that initial scene point, right? Number one. We know that it got us to roughly 444 words. We see a bit of a bridge, right? Talking about the walk to the parole committee. We get there. So all of this is sort of a gray area for 1 and 2. It's the place where those two things sort of start to blend together, and we lead up to the main point in point number 2, which is pretty simple. It's just that there's an officer that doesn't think that he should get released early. That happens down here. It's near the end of that point too. So we hit the main point in each of these sections. We want to make sure that this happens, that it's clear. We make sure that this happens in the next part, and that that's clear. Cable finally learns what the meeting is about. Right there. That's where they're talking about that from point 3. So there's a lot of detail here. There's a lot of development in this section that wasn't really referenced in the scene points themselves. That's the beauty of this whole process, this whole system, is that when you use this system, when you write that particular scene point, all you know is that you need to reach that goal. As long as you reach that goal and you're reaching your word count targets, you will be on track. Bridging them from one point to the other is probably easier than a lot of people imagine it to be when they first look at something like this. It's not as difficult as it seems. You're just flowing from one point to the next. You need some sort of a transition. We know just looking at this, he's going to start somewhere. Prison makes the most sense. We start out in terms of writing style. Mitchell Thompson, that we now know that that's Cable's actual name, or that's this character's name. We make it clear that he has rejected that name by showing that he doesn't pay attention to it. That also establishes that he has the ability to sort of charm people, because instead of coming in and hitting him with a fucking nightstick or something, because this he's a non-cooperative prisoner, Officer Randall instead is a little bit friendly with him, and he doesn't punish him for not answering and wanting to go by his own name, that sort of thing. Anyways, all those little details, you fold those in as you fill out these individual plot points. And when you read this whole part of this whole scene as a whole, they look choppy from the outside, but when you get inside to the scene and you're reading it go from one point to the next, it's not choppy at all. There's a little bit of art to that aspect to it. It's not just structure. It's a little bit about, learning how to take those points and turn them into an actual scene. That writing style, all of that stuff, that's outside the scope of this particular video series. I may get around to it one day, but the majority of my system, where I'm headed as far as this and other videos go, is going to have to do mostly with outlining, with developing the story and doing it rapidly and doing it well. There are some links below that have to do with books and resources on writing style, how to practice writing, things like that. So if you're a YouTuber and you're seeing this video as it goes public, and writing is something that you're interested in, but it's not something that you've done a lot of, this system is a great place to start to really get a handle on story structure, to really get a handle on how to balance the plot with character arc, how to make sure that everything stays relevant to everything else and that you sort of stay focused and stay on task in the story. This is the first of what will be several videos. I will eventually do another video tracking the process of taking this same system and applying it to a thriller, to a cozy mystery, to a fantasy story, to a sci-fi story, and some of those are genres that I'm actually going to dip my own toes in. So I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that this has given you some insight into a really useful way to approach outlining. I hope that it's something that you can use. By all means, if this is public by now, leave whatever you want in the comments, leave questions. It will take me probably some time to kind of get around to questions and comments and that sort of thing. I keep a pretty full schedule, and I took off several days of a busy schedule to do these videos and then edit them together. But I'll do my best to sort of address some things. And if you are if you're a blossoming writer and you're interested in writing romance especially, but also if you're interested in writing other types of genre fiction, I cannot recommend enough the value of going to dirtydiscourse.com. There's a link in the information below. Going to dirtydiscourse.com, signing up for the monthly subscription, getting involved with our community, getting involved with other writers, learning the not just the craft of writing and the craft of storytelling, but also all the other million things you need to know to be a successful author. You can find it all on Dirty Discourse. It's an incredible community. It's where I got my start as a writer. It's where I hang out, and you will benefit more from joining Dirty Discourse than you probably will from reading every single book on Amazon about how to write, plan, market, and make any book successful. It's just, I can't say enough good things about this community. So definitely reach out if that's something that you're interested in. That's it for this video series. Good luck out there. Be sure and check out the template below if you want to take this system directly and actually apply it step by step. And I hope that I'll see you guys again.